you guys in the right state of mind? Let's go.
These are fragments of a video not fully seen in public before that reveal brutal facts long denied by the US military.
When's the last time you felt you could trust the US government? When's the last time you felt that they weren't lying to you? And in this case, I want to specify what's going on with armed forces. If you haven't seen the video, it's been well known, well documented that there's a lot that happens within armed forces that can't be officially talked about. And so now we have breaking news of something that occurred a few years ago. That was a major point of impact, and that happened back in Afghanistan. Of course, the official speaking points were that nothing had happened during the runway escape when Afghanistan was collapsing and the Taliban were taking over. But as always, the truth does come out, and here we have video.
Let's go back to the horrific dusk of August 26, 2021. An ISIS bomb outside Kabul airport tears through a packed crowd. 170 Afghans and 13 American military are killed in the largest casualty event there in a decade. A moment of acute savagery at the end of America's longest war. But it's been mired in dispute ever since. 2 Pentagon investigations have insisted everyone was killed by the bomb and dismissed dozens of Afghans' accounts to CNN 2 years ago that Afghan civilians were shot in the chaotic aftermath.
No definitive proof that anyone was ever hit or killed by gunfire.
But this new video, which begins outside the airport's Abbey Gate entrance, reveals much more shooting after the blast than the Pentagon said. Combined with new accounts to CNN of Marines opening fire and gunshot injuries in Afghan civilians, it challenges the rigour and reliability of the 2 Pentagon investigations that declared no Afghan civilians were shot dead in the chaotic aftermath. The bomb detonates. The footage then stops and picks up 3 seconds later.
You good? You good? Right here. Right here. All right. Hey. I got that on film, dude. They're breaking through. Is that all right, guys? Hey. Get out. We're doing security.
Many Marines here were young, some on their first deployment. The gunfire starts. They run for cover. This long burst is about 17 shots, bringing us a total of 20. We're tallying shots fired and episodes of fire based on 2 forensic analyses on screen. You cannot see who is still firing here, and we never see Marines or anyone firing in this video. Short, controlled bursts in isolation. The CS gas canister has exploded in the blast, its gas choking this Marine. And in a moment, the total episodes of gunfire you've heard will start being more than the 3 the Pentagon has said happened.
Hey, you good?
Here. The gunfire continues. We leap forward 27 seconds as Afghans, arms raised, run into the airport.
No, it's just smoke and dirt, bro.
One burst, now another.
Is that the f***ing TV, bro?
They wonder if the Taliban, the TB, is shooting. 2 Marines told us they saw the Taliban just after the blast, looking as shocked as they were.
Oh. Come here. You good? Yeah, I'm fine. Hey, where's I need accountability. We're pushing them back there for sure. Gotcha. Any casualties, we're pushing
More
back.
shots.
Get down. Hey, you good? Hey,
Multiple Marines we spoke to who were there said they felt they were under fire, But the Pentagon has insisted for 2 years no militant gunmen opened fire here. They've said the only shots fired here were 2 bursts by US Marines and 1 from UK troops, once in a big burst from a nearby tower, all bursts near simultaneous. So, according to their investigations, we must be hearing Marines or the British firing here. More controlled shots. Jump forwards another 39 seconds and more shots.
Hey!
They're still absorbing what happened.
There's a IED, bro.
15 seconds later, more shooting.
Mother. Hey, you guys good? Hey, look at me. Are you guys in the right state of mind? Let's go.
They head out into the chaos to help. You've just seen and heard at least 43 shots fired in at least 11 episodes of shooting. It matters, as it is just short of 4 minutes of sporadic fire, most of which the Pentagon has said for 2 years did not happen. And that shows their narrative of this horrific and disputed event is wrong. This is how terrifying it was for Afghans outside minutes after the blast. So who was shooting and who were they firing at? For the first time, a Marine eyewitness has come forward and told CNN the first big burst of gunfire at the start of the GoPro video you just saw came from where US Marines were standing near the blast site. We're using a different voice to hide his identity as he fears reprisals for describing the gunfire.
It was multiple. There's no doubt about that. It wasn't onesies and twosies. It was a mass volume of gunfire.
Down towards the Abbey Gate sniper tower, from roughly an area not too far away from where the blast had gone off. That's where you heard the shooting emanate from.
It would have been around that area, yes.
And there were US Marines, right? This was likely emanating from Marines on the ground.
Yes.
You think they fired into the crowd?
I couldn't tell you for certain.
But they wouldn't have fired into the air, right?
No, they would not have fired into the air.
Because you had a specific no warning shots order, right?
It wasn't a direct order, but it was a common understanding. No warning shots. These are kids. They're young, and they've only been taught what they've been taught. Some of these kids have been with the unit for quite literally 2-3 months prior to deployment.
And when you see the investigations, plural, the conclusions they've made that say anybody who talks about gunfire or people being shot are just the product of traumatic brain injury, misremembering. How do you feel about that?
It's a pathetic excuse. To say that every Marine, every soldier, every Navy corpsman on the deck has a traumatic brain injury and cannot remember gunfire is lunacy. It's outright disrespectful, and especially for it to come from somebody who wasn't there.
That gets to my point about the official talking points. How can you have something be an official talking point from someone who's not even there, from someone who chooses not to be there? They don't have the sense of responsibility, of duty, of anything that you can find remotely respectable. But yet they can somehow believe and force upon the public what they believe is an acceptable truth. This is why there's so much distrust for any government officials, for what the armed forces do. Even though we try and respect the soldiers themselves, it's not like leadership is out here showing themselves to be capable or respectable themselves. These are the soldiers that are literally putting their lives on the line, and you will not support them in telling the truth. Always asking for honesty, but never giving it. That's just the way of the world right now, and a lot of people are tired of it. That's why for this individual to come out and state these things and have to hide himself for telling the truth just shows the state of where we are right now. So kudos to him. Hopefully he doesn't get identified and therefore reprimanded or worse for doing what he should have done. And this just goes back to, from a personal level, when you heard about the kids there, like how they described them, they have just joined. They're only a few months in, and they're put into one of the worst situations you can think of. There is no real support. You are then left on your own to try and figure things out. Yet the ones who, again, should be supporting you in every way, shape, or form, then decide, you know what? I don't like what you're saying. I think you're going to be labeled as crazy. And will help push that narrative. So you have folks suffering in the middle of battle. As you can see, suffering from a gas canister that was blown up on the ground. Someone whose only battle I can think of in the morning or throughout their days is finding what parking lot to go so they can walk into the office and come up with this bullshit. They decide whether or not what you have to say and what you went through is worth telling to anyone, and therefore can just be shoved down into the dirt and forgotten about. So going back to what I mentioned about, like, on a personal level, I had once run to high school when the Iraq War was really getting underway and Afghanistan was more than a few years old. Yeah, I'm kind of telling on myself here with my age. All these recruiters, how willingly they were to lie to a young man's face, to go throw him into what could have been the pits of hell, like Mosul, maybe Baghdad itself, all these, battlefields somewhere lost in the mountains of Afghanistan. They didn't care. They just needed meat for the grinder, And something just sat in my stomach that did not believe these people. Something just felt off. Yeah, you can say whatever you want about Bush. I really had pushed back on him because around that time, it was just like, none of this makes sense. But you still have folks signing up. You still had folks who are willing to do one of the hardest jobs out there, putting their lives on the line. And yet you wonder why now these armed forces cannot hit the recruitment quotas. We know how you are, how you operate. You do not see us as human beings. It's just an empty uniform with a piece of meat attached to it, and therefore go get thrown in the front line because I got to go sit back and enjoy my multi-million-dollar payday from either just being around long enough. That's why a lot of people, again, hate baby boomers, because it's usually some baby boomer who has not yet done anything of this nature, either in decades or maybe not at all. He just knew, I'm saying he because usually a guy, knew the right people so he can get up to those levels. And so it's up to the young kids to go die in this war. Just use this target practice because some old fool thought he could make $1 out of this situation. That's a rough way of living.
As my squad leader's pulling me out, I remember as we're walking past, as he's like buddy carrying me walking past, I see my platoon sergeant walk past us saying, "Get back on that wall and shoot back at those." So I'm like, oh, we're in a gunfight too.
Another survivor, Christian Sanchez, carried out here injured in his left arm, also told the barber he shot someone who he thought was shooting at him.
Like, all I hear is ringing and flashes going on, and then I start hearing snaps. And I started realizing that's a dude shooting at me. I just started shooting at the dude. And while I was shooting, I remember looking at the guy, and he's I don't know, he's just there. And then he literally looks like he ate shit. Like I'm looking at him, and around him I could see impact.
If you need to go back, rewind, and take a look at that young man's face, I want you to stick on his expressions there and tell me, does that look like the expressions of a proud man? Of a man that feels fulfilled in what he did, supported in any way. This is what PTSD looks like, that post-traumatic stress disorder. And again, not only do these folks just leave these people who sign up for this kind of duty to be left alone while they're and unsupported while they're trying to do the hardest job, they are then left alone to suffer after their service is ended. There's no one that this person can turn to that can truly understand. There's supposed to be something like the Veteran Affairs, known as VA, that has been shown for decades to not be able to do a damn thing for these people. And so all you see is someone suffering in silence. And when they try to speak up, they're to be put down as if they were dogs.
Explosion injuries come with severe injuries, even with lots of hole in the bodies. But the people who were shot at, they had just one or two holes, exact in the chest or in the head. 170 people were killed totally. But the register, what we had, maybe 145.
And by your estimation, about half.
More than half, I think, were killed by gunshot.
Yet the night would get darker still. Ahmadi started getting phone calls in the local language Dari, threatening him and his staff to stop looking into who had been shot.
He told me, "What are you doing, doctor? And do you love your life? Do you love your families? This is not good. When you're collecting that data, it would make danger situation for you. And you should stop that as soon as possible."
So when you hear the American investigation say that you're just wrong, that you don't know what you're talking about.
I wonder, I hope one day they ask me or they call me what you saw. Like you came here and asked me, you came to Kabul and asked me about the situation. They never asked me.
Even though we described the video and our findings in great detail to the Pentagon, they said they would need to examine any new unseen video before they could assess it. They said their first investigation had thoroughly looked at allegations of outgoing fire from US and coalition forces following the blast. They said their review, released earlier this month, focused not on gunfire but the bomber and events leading up to the blast, but found no new evidence of a complex attack and uncovered no new assertions of outgoing fire, having no materialistic impact on the original investigation. Investigators have also not interviewed any Afghans for their reports, the Pentagon said, leaving the question of how hungry for the truth are they. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, London.
There is no hunger for the truth. There's just what's convenient and what isn't. That way they can shape their reality, their propaganda, their little story that they can sell. And these people's lives, they're just, honestly, quite unnecessary in their eyes. It's why they get treated as such. Even the ones who are supposed to be taken care of and be deemed important by us, our own citizens, our own soldiers, they are to be cast aside if they don't accept the narrative. Again, by folks who were not there, by folks who have an agenda that they need to push. And if that's how we treat our own, again, citizens, our own soldiers, what chance does someone from the third world, like Afghanistan, those locals, what chance do they stand? You saw the threats that the doctor was facing. And this is why we have so little faith in our government at this point. What are you doing that makes you so different from all the so-called enemies that we've been trying to topple for years, for decades? there's always this call for freedom. All I see is death. And as you can see in the video, that's all there was. It's all anyone has to look forward to when you don't fit the narrative and you feel that you must tell the truth. That's when you become inconvenient. But those are my thoughts. As always, leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought about the video, any other topics yourself, and especially if you are from the armed forces yourself, if you're in it, if you've been through it, any of your experiences, what has it been like? And what truth do you believe needs to be told to the world?